Well, apparently there are still a lot of people that don't know the existence of this gem of a game. Pokemon Fire Emblem, Pokemon Conquest. To get everyone up to speed before getting to the real nitty-gritty of this video, this game is a turn-based strategy game. We can have up to 6 Pokemon in each team every battle, with varying terrains and battlefields, each with their own quirks and gimmicks. This game is a collaboration between Game Freak and Koei, now Koei Tecmo, so for those of you that are a fan of the Samurai Warrior series, you might find a ton of familiar faces here. I went more in-depth into the first main story in my earlier Pokemon Conquest video, so be sure to check that one out first if you don't want to be spoiled. I'll be summarizing that story very briefly. We were quickly introduced to the region of Ransei, where 17 kingdoms reside, each vying for dominance over the whole region. Each kingdom has their own warriors, people with a unique ability to communicate with their Pokemon. Though the exact method of communication remains vague, we do understand that warriors from opposing kingdoms would battle it out with their Pokemon. Our journey started with Oichi, who guided us through pretty much the first half of the game. She would tell us that there existed a legend in Ransei, stating that if one warrior is able to unite all 17 kingdoms in the region under one banner, the Pokemon that created Ransei shall reveal itself. As a result, countless battles continue to be waged under the notion of unification. After managing to conquer about a quarter of the region, we were told that an evil warlord, Nobunaga, were trying to unify Ransei through sheer force, only to destroy it. We were urged to stop Nobunaga by Oichi, who later was revealed to be Nobunaga's very own sister. I guess this was meant to be a shocking and absolutely unforeseen plot twist, but anyone with a slight interest in the Sengoku era of Japanese history would see this coming 2.5 miles away. Well, that's about it for the backstory of this main story really. We would spend the majority of the time just leveling up our links with the partner Pokemon and slowly being introduced to the warriors and warlords of each kingdom. The first part of the story acted more as a tutorial, where we were scarcely challenged during our journey to unify Ransei for the first time. To those of you who are interested in picking up this game and playing it, this first part of the story is a really good way to kickstart your grinding process for links and warrior evolutions, a concept introduced about halfway in. That's right, you think only Pokemon can evolve? We too can evolve. After that last story exposition with Nobunaga, dialogues and cutscenes are far and few between. Before long, we were able to reach Dragnor, the kingdom where Nobunaga resided. We bested Nobunaga in a fairly straightforward manner, but that wasn't the end of the story. Having unified the region, Arceus descended upon us and wished that we linked with it. It took a couple of tries, and we finally linked with Arceus itself. Of course, that wasn't the end. Nobunaga rolled in with his crew, brandishing his mighty impressive shiny Rayquaza. We were subjected to more plot exposition, where Oichi asked why her brother was being an absolute ass, to which he responded with the most anime-type story. In short, Nobunaga had just grown weary of all the warriors using the Pokemon as nothing but tools for the quest of the legendary Pokemon. He sought to put an end to the legend so that the fighting may stop, finally bringing people and Pokemon closer. So Nobunaga wasn't a complete ass, he was just awkward and bad at communicating his thoughts. In any case, Arceus took note of how the two main pillars of the story really cared about Pokemon and entrusted us with the region of Ransei. Arceus then said we still weren't worthy and took off, obviously foreshadowing the true ending of the game. With the apparent conflict ended, we decided to return all the castles and kingdoms we previously conquered to their original warlords. We went back to Aurora and an era of peace ushered. Yes, peace, but not really peace. Oichi pretty much confirmed the existence of a true ending, and so the grind truly began. I thought about making this video in my usual 100 hours format, but there just wasn't enough variety in the content to justify it. Pokemon Conquest's post-game and the path to unlocking the true ending, or the real main story as others would call it, is quite repetitive. Terrifyingly so. You would have to really love this genre to get through it without getting bored, or you would have to be a real masochist for completing a game. There are 36 warlords and junior warlords in total, aside from our main character, and the last main story would only unlock after we complete every scenario. Although these scenarios greatly vary in difficulty, the premise and story behind these scenarios would sadly be categorized into only a few templates. The female warlords would have their own supremacy battle, the junior warlords participate in their own contests, the ninjas have their own thing, and these three have their own feud going on. Out of all these scenarios, only a handful would have a different objective other than unification or territory conquest, like Motonari and Ieyasu's goal of linking with 100 Pokemon. These scenarios would open with a short cutscene, and we were left to our own devices until it was completed. With that being said, all these scenarios would eventually prove to be a setup for the final story. While doing these stories, I took the chance to find perfect links for the warlords as best as I could. I find that doing these more repetitive type of grinds are a lot easier on the Pokemon gathering objectives, where the game would continue even after we conquered all of Ransei. A lot of our time was spent in Motonari's story, where we were able to gather about 80% of all the perfect links and evolving the warlords. Of course, the grind also continued in other scenarios as well. Unfortunately, Every time we start a new scenario, the links between warlords and Pokemon are all reset, making it a very lengthy endeavor. For this video in particular, each scenario would take around 3 to 5 hours. Honestly, thank God I was playing this on an emulator. The fast forward function single-handedly saved my sanity. Or whatever was left of it, really. Another tool that saved my sanity throughout these scenarios was the Guardian Charm. This item increases the attack power, range, and pretty much every stat in the game if the item holder is the only one fighting for the team. For these scenarios that I had no intention of grinding, we pretty much just slap a Guardian Charm on the warlord and have their Pokemon steamroll all the other kingdoms. A good example of this would be at Mitsuhide's scenario, where you have to defeat Nobunaga's army before the 3rd year. This scenario could be quite difficult since it's almost impossible to recruit more warriors early on, so I would definitely recommend using the Guardian Charm in the scenario. Also, Keiji managed to link with the Terrakion. This was pretty cool. After seeing the same credits over and over again, we finally arrive at Nobunaga's story, which I had saved for last. We finally booted Nobunaga's story, which gave an insight to why he started his crusade in the first place. It might be for a noble reason, sure, but he sure does love his villain laugh. The majority of the scenario was spent perfect linking Nobunaga with the Hydreigon and just generally grinding and preparing for the final story. It ended with a slightly different version than what happened in the main story, but that kind of goes for all the other scenarios as well. And the credits rolled again. I was hoping this would really be the second to last time I would see this come up. We finally unlocked the final scenario that would lead us to the true ending, and it only took us 135 hours. My god. I would be lying if I said this wasn't painful. Then again, it might be because I was trying to get this done as quickly as I possibly can. But, my complaining aside, we started the scenario and immediately picked up where the first story left off. The scene opened back in Aurora, with our main character just having a slow day after unifying Ransei and giving every kingdom back. You know, all in a day's work. Nobunaga, somehow now all chummy with us, was there for a visit, and we were just spending time together, trying to perfect our villain laughter, I'm sure. Suddenly, the other warlords started flooding in the kingdom, all saying how they wanted to test themselves against us and Nobunaga combined. Nobunaga simply laughed it off and called the situation interesting, all the while referring to himself in the 3rd person. Fantastic. We remain mute, expressing ourselves exclusively with special case characters. This final scenario started off similarly like the first one, starting in Aurora. We have a team of 3, consisting of our main character, Nobunaga, and Oichi. I realized I never did end up linking Oichi to another Pokemon, but she was rarely used anyway. Being a max difficulty scenario, all the other warlords started off fully evolved. This meant that all their stats are higher, making them a lot harder to face in battle. We can see this from the rating of their Pokemon, visible when hovering over their kingdoms. On top of the Jolteon we had used in the main story, I took the chance to link our main character with a Glaceon in between scenarios. However, considering the situation, I decided that our first course of action would be to invade Motochika over at Fontaine, making full use of Jolteon. The arena remained the same with the water gates, and all the stronger enemy Pokemon that proved to be a harder fight. One of the main reasons I decided to invade Fontaine first was to recruit Motochika, where he would prove to be absolutely vital in the coming battles for the unification of Ransei. Motochika's perfect link is with his Samurott, so it wasn't too hard to get. We equipped him with the Guardian Charm and sent him to Solo Ignis, where Hideyoshi's army resided. The Guardian Charm worked perfectly well, and the Omni-boosted Samurott went in and practically one-shot all of the enemy Pokemon. During this endeavor, we would ultimately secure the services of Hideyoshi as well, another vital warlord with a good partner Pokemon. And this is where my preferred strategy really shined through. We were to invade as many kingdoms as possible solo, so we could conquer as much as we could during one turn. Wasting a turn would mean the enemy armies powering up, and with their warlords already fully evolved, it was just a chance I wasn't willing to take. We switched over to Glaceon and headed over to Greenleaf next to challenge Motonari. I had to hard reset a couple of times because of bad RNG here, but Glaceon did a good enough job to secure the win. It's always harder to win these capture the flag type battles solo, as we're always in danger of losing the fight due to the turns running out. Nevertheless, we cleanly swept through Greenleaf and managed to recruit most of Motonari's army. We had to finish the turn because no other warriors could move, but it was all action in the next one. Nobunaga was sent alone with a Guardian Charm over to Pugilus to challenge Yoshihiro, which was quite risky on paper. Yoshihiro's Conkeldurr could easily overpower our Hydreigon. However, we were able to use the arena to our advantage. Pugilus' arena requires us to capture all 4 flags in the middle and keep them captured for 5 turns. Any Pokemon that gets hit on the edge of the arena would get knocked down, meaning Hydreigon could safely snipe all of Yoshihiro's Pokemon without being in danger itself. It also helped that once they would capture a flag, the AI would stubbornly stay over that flag to defend it. It felt a bit cheap, but all is fair in love and war. We managed to recruit Yoshihiro, one of my personal favorites to use. His Conkeldurr is just too good. The next battle is also a good chance to showcase one of the better warriors, Hideyoshi. Hideyoshi's perfect link is with his Infernape, and the Flame Monkey comes with the move Fire Spin. Fire Spin might be a terrible move in the base games, but it is the absolute opposite here. It has a wide area of attack, high damage, and the possibility of hitting up to 5 times. With this move, Yoshimoto's army never stood a chance over at Chrysales. We recruited Yoshimoto, but I swear, he is absolutely useless. I think I had one of the most difficult times trying to finish his scenario. I wasn't sure how to handle Violet and its slew of electric-type Pokemon, so I sent in the whole cavalry to deal with Ginchiyo and Muneshige. It was messy, but ultimately, we were able to conquer it just fine. At these higher links, the enemy Pokemon just feel really tanky. We weren't able to recruit both Ginchiyo and Muneshige, but it was fine. Their Pokemon are a bit hard to use with Guardian Charms. For Shingen's Terrera, we went with my boy Motochika again. Motochika's Aqua Tail deals damage to 3 spaces directly in front of him, so we would never find ourselves in a situation where we can't attack. I have always found Terrera's battlefield to be annoying, so thankfully we were able to get this done quite quickly. Motochika's Samurott was able to down most of the enemy Pokemon, and we had to chase this runaway Scyther at the end. With all the flags captured, we were able to recruit Shingen and Yukimura into our service. Before challenging Kenshin's Illusio, we went ahead and advanced to Kotaro's Yaksha. Here, Yoshihiro had a good time whacking the Dark-type Pokemon into submission. Yoshihiro's Conkeldurr is also a good Pokemon to solo. It has high damage and its attack area is very straightforward. Kotaro had no answer for Yoshihiro and was conscripted into our service as well. After thinking about how to approach Illusio for some time, I decided to solo it with Nobunaga. Nobunaga will always be at risk from Aya's Bear Tick, and rightfully so. I had to hard reset twice. The good RNG wasn't that hard to get, and Hydreigon had the advantage of bypassing the colored portals most of the time. In doing so, reaching the flags were much easier, and that was probably the biggest hurdle of this battle. We recruited Kenshin, Aya, and Kanetsugu, all pivotal warriors for this fight. Not to mention, I've already spent enough time trying to evolve them. Because this final scenario started off with the facilities upgraded, we received a text scene saying that mysterious Pokemon had appeared in both these kingdoms. These would be legendary Pokemon that we can link with. In Illusio, Kenshin would have a perfect link with Mewtwo, and in Terrera, Shingen would have a perfect link with Groudon. Great, we now have 2 legendary Pokemon in our roster. To bring this turn to a close, we sent Motochika out alone again, taking on Ujiyasu's army over at Crackspur. Motochika remained unbeaten, getting Ujiyasu and Kai to join our army. The army of fools took down Viperia with Nobunaga, Aya, and Kanetsugu, but we failed to recruit any of the enemy warlords. That was alright, we still had Motochika. Avia was more or less the same. We sent in more of the army of fools to invade Masamune and Magoichi. And Magoichi was just being the ultimate troll. Look at him, staying away from all the action. What a coward. Surprisingly, we were still able to recruit both Masamune and Magoichi after the battle. I really thought we had missed the recruitment window. And now, we only had 4 kingdoms left to conquer. Time went by so fast. Well, to be fair, only 6 turns had elapsed since the start of the campaign. Rotating our Guardian Charms worked well. Not that I had to, I had accumulated about 20 of them from all the grinding. Motochika was back in action over at Spectra, where No and her cronies were lying in wait. All of them got slapped by Samurott's tail, and Motochika asserted his dominance over No and Okuni. Dominance so good that they wanted to become his followers. Then it was time for Valora. This has got to be my least favorite arena in the game, of all time. Things just move too slowly in this arena, and the cranes moving the Pokemon around is just massively annoying. But setting my frustration aside, we sent in Shingen with his newfound Groudon solo, and well, it was just a waiting game really. This took a long time to finish, but we did get Ieyasu and Tadakatsu. In a hurry to wrap it up, we immediately headed over to Nixstorm with Fool, Hideyoshi, and Yoshihiro. The Conkeldurr proved to be crucial in taking out Mitsuhide's Lapras, and the Infernape and Jolteon took care of the rest. We recruited Mitsuhide and his daughter Gracia, and we finally can breathe for a while. By stationing powerful warlords around Dragnor, this will prevent the AI from invading the surrounding kingdoms. Ever. Before finishing off this scenario, we still had one thing left to do. Well, 2. This Articuno just kinda popped out of nowhere, and now Mitsuhide had to link with it. Now we only have one thing left to do before the final battle. We had to grind our main character's evolution link to 80% and have him undergo his final evolution. The fastest way to do it is just to visit a level 3 facility with the most Pokemon in it, slap a Guardian Charm, and kill everything. This should net us links ranging from 4 to 8%, making it a very efficient way to grind. We didn't have to worry about an AI invasion up north, so all we had to do was to keep the other warlords busy so they don't leave the army. After a significant amount of time, we finally did it. Fool's Glaceon reached 80% and we were able to achieve our final evolution. Look at that. Bigger armor. Fancy. We then received a notice about a mysterious Pokemon appearing in a temple in Aurora, which I was completely not expecting, but one look at it was enough. It was Arceus. I know it's supposed to be pronounced Arceus, but I really prefer and grew up with Arceus. In any case, it took 2 turns to link with Arceus, and now Fool has anime and God at his side. Finally, it was time for Dragnor, headed by Ranmaru, who is apparently a historical Bishonen. You guys can find out what that means for yourselves. We brought the whole cavalry for this. I mean, we did have God on our side and won a decisive battle. I didn't even want Ranmaru after this battle, but I guess he really wanted to join our kingdom. Upon the conclusion of the battle, our main character and Nobunaga stood atop the tower and contemplated upon their victory. Nobunaga stated that we have showed all that people should aspire to great things, that they should not be content with themselves being weak. Nobunaga apparently shared our sentiment and told us to conquer other lands? Is that what he's getting at? More genocide. Fine, we could do that. Finally, the real credits played out. The credits had the warlords with perfect links absolutely delighted, and the ones without their perfect links really dejected for some reason. If this is Koei Tecmo's underhanded way of telling me to go back and grind for all of those perfect links, well, it's working. I'll see you next time after I complete all those perfect links. Oh yeah, it took me 140 hours to do all these.